you have an issue about something and then like you don't do anything to change it, in my mind, shut the fuck up, because you're not doing anything to change it. Like everyone talks about slavery and all these things. Everybody up here has an opinion, but I would also say that of those of us that have an opinion, maybe one or two of us has done anything that can actually affect positive change, not just for themselves, but for others. So this is why, like for me, like I've put sweat equity into changing a lot of the things that I had an issue with about how I was raised, what happened to my people before that, right? So knowing that to be true, I just have a hard conversation. I have a hard time having conversations with people who are victims, who are choosing to stay victims because they don't want to do shit but complain about the same things that I'm actually putting my sweat equity and my blood, sweat, and tears into changing for me and my kids. So it's almost like, you know, if you're the one woman in a room that's not a hoe, you're gonna have a hard time having a conversation about relationships in a room full of hoes.
Is the relationship that we have with the black man. I heard a psychiatrist when I was on one of the panels say that African-American men and women are suffering from 450 years of post-slavery PTSD.
Yes.
So one of the things that I love about this thing right here is that the next one I want to see is black men and black women sitting down together and talking about how do we learn to exist in peace. And I say that because I'm saying this, and a lot of times I have to catch myself. It's emotional. I grew up with a lot of violence around me. My father, when he drank, I seen him knock women. My father fight a baby. Mm-hmm. He was just off. He was mentally off from the oppression of this culture that broke him. And, you know, so we were born, a lot of us were born into that, our fathers' fathers, and we're trying to break those cycles. So somehow that ties into me to women's reproductive choices in terms of having a baby with a guy that's comes from a broken family. Now the baby coming in with a broken family and bam, 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 and the mother's asking the father for support, and like, yo, I ain't asked you to have that motherfucking baby. You know, that ain't shit. I don't even know if that's that motherfucker. I mean, there's so many levels to this that make women cower or not want to talk, you know, or be the victim of one guy shot his baby mama and the kids the other day. It's so I think we got to attack that from not just a right now in this racist culture that we're seeing with this administration, but also from a generational standpoint.
For sure.
I don't have the historical information, man. That's why I'm a listener, man. I'm a great listener. But you know, when I hear, you know, from your generation, your perspective, and your perspective, and everybody's, you know, perspective in the sense that as we get into it, I feel like we let women down in that regard. We didn't stand on business. And
What you mean by that?
I just feel like we let depression wear us down. Fathers let depression wear them down and beat them down, take them out of the house, and therefore
they forced them out of the house.
Forced them.
No, they had a program. They forced them out. They didn't leave the house.
I feel that. I understand that. I can't, but ain't nobody gonna make me leave my woman. I get that. I get it, but ain't nobody gonna make me leave my family.
I got you.
I understand that. I could never fathom what went on back then.
I think you might be alluding to weak-ass men allowing things that might be coming up. Like, you know, like, oh, this seems like, I don't know exactly the historical presence of it either, but you know how you say, like, oh, like, you know, you stripping us from the house. Oftentimes, I'm a man who dates men. A lot of men are strong. So the way that you say you're not gonna take nobody from my family, you're not gonna strip me from my family, a lot of people don't walk with that. A lot of people don't have that. So I mean, like, it is systematic, but I mean, at the same time,
I mean,
you part of like the few men who is not gonna live their life like that.
I mean, I get a system that you live in a place that is just geared to tell you you ain't shit, you ain't shit, you ain't shit,
and it beats you down.
You ain't shit, you ain't shit.
Yeah.
And it beats your other counterpart down. So y'all come home to
madness.
beatness. Yeah. Nobody know how to heal anybody, right?
It's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of different influences that happen, whether it's drugs, right? We know that our community struggled with that for a long time.
But let's talk about them. Let's go back. Let's go back and talk about the CIA putting the drugs in the neighborhood.
That's what I was gonna say. We're in a country where drugs is probably the most highest profit of things that you want, right? But just speaking on fatherhood and being in the house and not being in the household, I think it's a lot of pressures coming from East Side, right?
Yeah.
I've looked at fathers who weren't in the household and had conversations with them and say, "Man, you've been on drugs since you was 12 years old, brother. Your brain doesn't have the capability of thinking correctly,
That's true.
right? You are afraid that you can't provide for your family, so you would rather leave, right? Not knowing that you have a woman who's willing to stay down with you and hold you down no matter what, right? So it's just as a man who, even to this day, get nervous, right? Like, oh man, this shit is slowing up. Like, am I better off telling my baby and them, like, are y'all good? No, of course not, right?
Right.
But you have to be honest about yourself and say, I'm fearful of certain things, and say, and not necessarily a weakness, but necessarily it's like, I'm scared. Right, that I can't provide, and now I've either let someone else kind of tell me what I need to do, right, rather than following my own intuition and having a relationship with my ancestors in the universe, and that can really guide you, or having that one-on-one with your lady. So many things that can pull people out of the house. Similar to the conversation, is like, well, if I was enslaved, I wouldn't have done that. It's like, well, you really don't know.
So I do agree that we're still suffering from PTSD on both sides. I think that's something that we have to really have a serious conversation about, because a lot of the times the underlying issues that we have within our relationships, conversations, and even our ability or inability to progress on this platform is because a lot of that shows up. And I think a lot of us are not conscious of it, and we need to be. And then if we are, some people are just not patient and understanding or empathetic enough. And that's a problem, because a lot of you all on this panel, you don't listen to understand. You listen to dissect and disrespect. You listen because you are you like to be conversely dominant. That's what I like to say. Like, you have a superiority you think is the only right thought. And you guys will go back and forth with that. It's ridiculous. So let me move on. I do agree that there's a disconnection, and that we're going into destructive cycles. But again, this takes awareness of you, what's happening in your life, and if you would like that to continue. So a lot of us just move through life, just getting into relationships and sexing our way through. Like, we lack communication, we lack that understanding, we lack discipline, and we run away from brave, honest conversations and circumstances. That's an issue. So we do have generational curses. I'm not gonna say I don't like. Luke James said that he was a great listener, that he had no historical context. I have a problem with that, because without historical context, you're not able to truly evaluate our progress, where we're going, where we're not. You're just listening. And that's a problem, because you could be listening to the wrong people and they're telling you the wrong things. So you have to be able to evaluate what somebody's saying by doing your own self-knowledge and educating. Like, you gotta go back. And I like that Clifton Powell was like asking them to go back to certain things, because I don't think they had knowledge of that. And that still shows up right now today. So I just don't like that he was just like, I'm a listener. That's awesome. But you also have to be a student, like a lifelong learner. I'll keep going. Depression, definitely true. We spoke about that. A lot of people in our community are just so against therapeutic practices, talking about their emotions, walking it through. That's an issue. Your relationships are not rehabilitation centers, and neither are the women and men that you get with. They're not in-house counselors. I'll keep going. I don't like that one of those guys said that there was like weak men, or he thought that they were weak men, maybe because they fell for the okie doke and they left. Like, that's subjective. If you're not dealing with those battles, you can't determine if they're weak or not. I think that that's just based on strategic divisiveness, and we know that already. That's what they were talking about. I do feel bad for men who have placed value in themselves with their inability or ability to provide, because now you all have like this false sense of security or false sense of identity. So like, if you can't provide, now you feel like you're not a man. It's like too many emasculating circumstances that you have to, I guess, go through. Like, I don't understand why we can't evolve that. Like, it's not just your ability to provide for us, and it's not financially, because a lot of you all make money, but you're horrible partners. Like, we can't talk to you. You don't talk to us. You don't provide safe spaces. We're not allowed to do it for you. Like, you put up walls. It's very hard to get to you all because you're emotionally avoidant. So anyway, a lot was said on there, and I completely agree. But again, I've said this before and I'll keep saying it. Until we're really able to have those brave conversations around self-awareness, cultural awareness, and what we need to do as a people, we're just going to keep having these conversations. But it was great to hear. I'll end.
I actually agree with everything that Pearl stated. The only additional that I would add to it, or a little caveat, is I feel that sometimes we as a culture use our past as an excuse for our continued behavior rather than the motivation to do better and to grow from it. Yes, we have these traumas that are passed down, through generations. But as you stated, right, knowing that history, it allows us to also understand that even through the toughest times, we still had people that were able to persevere and to get through and to become better. And as you stated, it kind of starts with you wanting to first educate yourself, evaluate yourself, want to grow, and then move forward past that, right? So we can acknowledge that, yes, we have this systemic problem. We have these issues that are within our bloodlines, built into our DNA, but it's not something that cannot be overcome. It's not something that cannot be changed. We have to just be willing to do it. And I think too often, a lot of people in our communities are not willing to put in the work. Like you stated, Ms. Pearl, they're not patient enough to go through the process. They don't like to be called out on bad behavior, or even speaking specific to our own families, right? When we start to call out certain things that we don't agree with, that don't work, putting each other down, making men feel like they can only be a man if they only provide, things of that nature, we get, ridiculed for trying to correct certain behaviors. So I think sometimes it takes for us, unfortunately, to separate ourselves and to make ourselves better so that we can create our own better future for our children overall. But I would just like for us as a community to not only acknowledge our past, but also use it as the engine or the motivation for us to continue to move forward, learn from it, grow from it, and to heal the scars that are within us.
I like what Ms. Pearl said. I like what Ty said. What I think is, I think that you should always acknowledge, acknowledgement of the past is just fine. However, you should always be focused on solutions. And I don't think a lot of people talk about it, but I personally think that Black people, from growing up in the families that we grew up in, we have this thing where and I don't know if y'all ever experienced like what some red pill guys is, that like they have this thing where they revert everything, no matter what you're talking about. It's a talent of reverting it back to a woman. And it's because of the place that they're stuck in. They revert it all, and no matter what it is, they'll figure out a way to revert it back. And I think it's subconscious. I think Black people have the same thing of figuring out a way to revert everything back to something else, which may be true that it came from somewhere. However, when we're trying to have a conversation about solutions, we derail it often. And that's my problem a lot of times, because I'm so solution oriented. It's just how I get down. It's how my brain works. It just finds solutions, and it's always somebody, a lot of us, who is figuring out a way to dismantle my conversation of how to get to another place. And I think that it's ingrained in us. It's ingrained in us because of the way we grew up, because of the way that our parents talked, and because our parents and our grandparents went through something that we didn't go through. But the way that they talk to us, it's like it's engraved into the way that we speak. So that's my problem.
We keep blaming shit the way we are right now on shit that happened, 50, 60 years ago. Nothing's going to change. It's everybody wants to attribute the reason why we do the shit we do, why we're still in last place, to some shit that we can't control instead of focus on the things we can control. I don't think that there's a solution that can come from those types of conversations, because we're too busy blaming our behavior on something instead of taking accountability for what we're doing and then choosing to do something different. So that's not a conversation that I want to be a part of, because again, it's like when your girl comes to you and just complains about some shit and she doesn't want a solution. She just wants to complain. And that's what this sounds like a lot when we have these conversations or especially like when you see on these panels, because you're just complaining about stuff that's common knowledge. So if you want to do something different, if you don't like the way your circumstances are, and you've identified why your circumstances are the way you are, it's on you to take action to change your circumstances, or, shut up. It's like either, if you don't do anything about it, you're accepting it. And if you're not going to do anything about it, stop complaining.
I agree with what Willie was saying. I do. I just want to give like a little pushback to like when you're saying like you got to come up with solutions. If you want something to change, do it. That's great from more like an individualistic standpoint. When we're speaking about like all of us together, like all 10 of us on the panel, like if we were trying to come to a general consensus and we just have people that are either not on board, like what you're saying, like they just want to keep complaining. But even isn't that an issue too? Maybe they're not complaining. They just want to be heard and they're just voicing their opinion. Like maybe your woman is not complaining and she's not looking for you to create a solution because maybe she already knows what the solution is. She's just telling you how she feels. So sometimes when we come into these panels and we having these conversations, some people are just not complaining. They're just giving you their lived experience or their perspective. It may have a negative connotation on it, but I don't always think that that's necessarily what it is. But again, my point was that I think it's more difficult when we come together to try to make progress as a whole when people are literally like drilling holes in the boat. So like, I get what you're saying. Honestly, I do.
All I'm saying as far as that concern is that when you're complaining, the amount of effort you put into complaining outweighs what you're doing to change what it is you're complaining about. That's when I have a problem. And the majority of people are doing more complaining than they're doing, or than they're taking action to fix what they're complaining about. That's where you lose me. Because if you have an issue about something, and then like you don't do anything to change it, in my mind, shut the fuck up, because you're not doing anything to change it. Like everyone's talks about slavery and all these things. Everybody up here has an opinion, but I would also say that of those of us that have an opinion, maybe one or two of us has done anything that can actually affect positive change, not just for themselves, but for others. So this is why, like for me, like I've put sweat equity into changing a lot of the things that I had an issue with about how I was raised, what happened to my people before that, right? So knowing that to be true, I just have a hard conversation. I have a hard time having conversations with people who are victims, who are choosing to stay victims because they don't want to do shit but complain about the same things that I'm actually putting my sweat equity and my blood, sweat, and tears into changing for me and my kids. So it's almost like, if you're the one woman in a room that's not a hoe, you're going to have a hard time having a conversation about relationships in a room full of hoes.
I get you. So transfers of energy, and we need to be more productive and conductive. Constructive and productive.
I keep that shit so far away from me. Like if you complain and whine, like that's just not, it doesn't work. So I want you to keep far away from me. So I just don't engage when I hear people talking like that.
I get you. Solution oriented. I can see.